Hello everyone, welcome back. We're going to be looking at lesson 3-2 today, transactions that are affecting prepaid insurance and supplies. So the learning objectives of this lesson would be to analyze and record cash transactions using source documents. We want to become even more familiar with source documents, and to analyze and record transactions for buying and paying on account. We want to just remember that source documents are the documents a business uses to prove that transactions or activity took place. And we want to remember that when we buy and pay on account, we have either purchased services or we have purchased materials, and we're doing that in a way that we're going to be paying for them later. So, cash paid for insurance. We're going to look at a transaction where we used check number 2 to pay cash for insurance, and the check was $900. So as we look at this activity, we're looking at our prepaid insurance account. That's going to be increasing, so that will be our debit. And our cash account is going to be decreasing, so that's going to be our credit transaction. When we're looking in our general journal, we're going to be looking at recording the date of our transaction. So the date is going to be January 3rd. We then want to go ahead and write our debit transaction first, or the debit part of it. So that's going to be a debit to prepaid insurance, and the debit amount is $900. We're going to follow with the credit transaction. Remember to indent a little bit on that general journal line. We're going to be going ahead and putting a credit to cash of $900. And finally, we need to make ourselves a note about the source document that we are using. In this case, check number 2. Second transaction we'd like to look at would be buying supplies on account. So on January 5th, we bought supplies on account from Canyon Office Supplies in the amount of $220. Our source document is memorandum or memo number 1. So we are going to be increasing the value of our supply account, which means a debit to supplies. And then we're going to be increasing our accounts payable, because remember, we purchased on account. So this is an accounts payable transaction. We're going to be increasing our accounts payable balance, which means we're going to be doing a credit to accounts payable. When we go ahead and look at that general journal entry, you can see the first thing we record is the date, January 5th. The account that's going to be listed first is the debit account, which would be supplies for $220. The next thing that we're going to go ahead and write is our accounts payable account on the credit account line, so that's second. And it's the same $220 because this is double entry accounting. Finally, we want to make sure we indicate the document, which is M1 for memo number 1. All right, our third transaction we're going to be looking at here is paying cash on account. So we're going to be paying cash on account to Canyon Office Supplies using check number 3. The first item here, because we're going to be paying on our account, we're going to decrease the amount of our accounts payable transaction, the amount of our accounts payable in this transaction. So our accounts payable is going to decrease by $100, which makes it a debit to accounts payable. We're also going to be decreasing the amount of our cash account, and that will be our credit transaction, the credit side. So if we go ahead and look at our general journal, on January 9, the debit part of this transaction is accounts payable in the amount of $100. The credit part of this transaction is crediting cash for the same $100. And finally, we need to make a note about the source document, check number 3. So we see the C3 right there. Okay, that was a quick little lesson for us. So to audit our understanding, when cash is paid for insurance, which account is listed on the first line of the entry? We want to be thinking about the 2 accounts that are going to be impacted here, and we want to identify the account that's going to be the debit side of the transaction. Second, when supplies are bought on account, which account is listed first on the first line of the entry? So we want to be thinking about the 2 pieces of the transaction, supplies an on account, and then let's go ahead and make sure we understand which one is going to be the debit. Finally, when supplies are bought on account, which account is listed on the second line of the entry or the credit part of the transaction. So again, think through both pieces of the transaction, supplies and on account. Okay, looks like when we're going to be paying cash on account, which account listed is the second line. So we want to make sure we identify the two accounts that are impacted, cash, and we're paying on our account. And the second piece of that's going to be the credit portion. That wraps up the lesson 3-2. You can go ahead and complete the questions for the Audit Your Understanding, and then go ahead and do the work together and on your own.